So, good evening and welcome to VIBE Celebrates on behalf of VX3 Exchange, which is the operating name for the Canadian Centre for Civic Media and Arts Development Incorporated, and its subsidiary VIBE105 FM. I would like to welcome all of you to this evening's panel discussion, the first of its kind on our platform celebrating women of VIBE105. My name is Fatima Hussein, your moderator for this celebration on International Women's Day. I'm a media curator, editor and educator, and currently a news desk coordinator for VIBE105 FM and civic media instructor for VX3 Exchange. As part of our daily routine, we produce multimedia features such as Impact, articles, reviews for our blogs, and interviews for Vibe Talks, while actively supporting the civic media scene. Today, we will be discussing three very important points as part of this large theme. The first being the influence of BIPOC women in media and culture, the need for more female leaders and diversity in media, and how Canadian media can drive gender equality, with a star-studded panel, the star-studded diverse panel, let me underline this, of women ambassadors from VIBE105. And for our audience here, thank you for joining us. We'd love to hear from you, and therefore we'll be taking questions towards the end of the panel. You can type your questions in the chat and we'll take it from there. So without further ado, let's have our panelists introduce themselves. Joining us today is DJ Mel Boogie.
Hi.
Hey Mel, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. DJ Mel Boogie. I've been doing radio for almost 30 years now. And I got my start at CHRY, bounced to CKLN, and was very happy to become a part of the VIBE105 family. And I really miss being in the station and seeing you guys all in person, but I'm glad to be a part of this panel with such esteemed co-panelists.
Welcome, Mel. Next up, we have Kerrie.
Hi everyone. Well, Kerrie has been with the station and the station's original platform of CHRY for about 18 years. And stepping into the radio station was the first day of my life changing. So it is home for me, literally, because it's the only station I listened to growing up, right in the Kiel and Shepard area. So I've grown with the station. I love the station, and looking at all these beautiful faces here, this is obviously why so many in our community love the station also, because it's like vibrant, just a lot of nice faces, wonderful voices, and a great community gathering tonight. Thanks.
Thank you, Kerrie. Welcome to this evening's panel discussion. Up next, we have Emcee Nadz.
Hi, good evening, everybody. All my ladies, I miss you guys. I go by Emcee Nadz. Sometimes I just say Nadz when I'm on air. I'm a host on the afternoon vibe at 2 o'clock every Tuesday, and I do emceeing around the city. I actually know CHRY when I was going to school at York. I used to volunteer, but nobody remembers me. Used to be on the phones and stuff, doing those donations. I studied radio when I was at Seneca, graduated top of my class, and then I just kind of chilled on it a little bit. Life happened, but I'm back at it now, going on 7-8 years now, which is cool. So time flies when you're having fun. So thanks everybody for joining us tonight. I'm excited.
You're welcome. We're equally excited as well. Next up, we have Simply Lee.
Hello everybody, Simply Lee the MC. I've been actually contributing with Vibe. I got my radio training. Fatima helped me out a lot. I've been doing that for I think the last 3 years. Time like really flies. It feels like yesterday, but it's been a while. I do emceeing around the city, event hosting and things like that. And I've been having a great time with the Vibe family, and I hope to continue to grow. So thank you all for being here, and thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here on this evening's panel. Next, we have the award-winning host of Radio Migrante. We have Aria Gamana.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you for having me, first and foremost. And very short, I'm Rhea, from Radyo Migrante. I'm one of the co-producers of the show that airs on Sundays from 1 to 2 p.m. And I started my humble beginnings way back at CHRY in 2012 and continues to this day with VIBE105. And Radyo Migrante is a show that, it's a spoken word show that features stories that matters to the Filipinos living here in Canada as well as in the Philippines. So once again, thank you so much for having me here.
You're welcome, Rhea. Next, we have No Better Nina.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Nina. I started at VIBE5. This is my 5th year, actually. So 5 years ago, I was a York student. I was actually everyone's assistant at some point in time. And then eventually worked my way into doing the swings, which I do Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I also host Reppin', where we showcase local upcoming artists. I write a bunch of articles for the website. And I also work with hashtag on Saturday mornings. So I'm all over the place, but I'm here. And yeah, it's been an enjoyable 5 years, and I'm excited to see what else the next 5 years have VIBE hold, and yeah.
Really, we're equally excited to have you here. And last but not the least, we have with us today a seasoned curator, thinker, media personality, and consultant, Danae Pierce. Danae?
Hello, everyone. So happy to see familiar faces, so happy to see female contributors in media. My history with VX3 VIBE is a storied one. I'm one of the founding, members, founding CEO, but was with CHRY before, of course, and led the transition into what you now have as VIBE VX3. Left VIBE VX3 in about my 2nd year of leadership, and went on to do other things, but still stayed in media, still a consultant in media, still have clients who badger me for different things in media. But I also didn't leave VIBE or VX3 out. So I have returned as a consultant. I've also returned to host. Some of you may have heard me. And I've also now just recently been voted to the board of directors for VX3 and VIBE. So I'm not gone, still around, still contributing, and still happy to do so. Also very happy to see the growth in what was our baby that now is held in Randy's arms. But very happy to see the arc of the growth and excited for the potential for the brand, when we were dreaming it up. So looking forward to this conversation this evening and sharing with everybody new and old.
Thank you, Danae. Once again, a very warm welcome to our panelists here. Undoubtedly, women globally have made an influential mark in the media world. Oprah Winfrey, Priyanka Chopra, to name a few. Let's begin by discussing the overall influence female voices have had on media over the years with our two most tenured voices here, Danae Pierce and Kerrie Mullings. Danae, you've been in the media for over 15 years. What has your observation been of the evolvement of the female voice since you first started on the airwaves?
I'll start off by saying media was my dream. And so as an immigrant to Canada, I came with the dream to work in media, work in broadcasting. And in 1999, when I came to Canada, pursuing this dream, the contribution of women in media was clearly missing representation, and definitely missing representation in leadership. We were in 1999 a 71 to 29 ratio, men being the 71, and that is working jobs in media. Sadly, we can't report a significant growth. What we can report is that there are more female graduates in media studies and related fields almost double, but we cannot necessarily report that it's reflected in leadership. So I'll give you an example. When I became head of CHRY, I was the second Black female in all of campus community radio to be an operations manager, ED, whatever titles that were being thrown around in our sector. To date, I can't say that percentage has grown much. And it would be the same for mainstream platforms. I remember my last year officially as a staff at VIBE, I was invited to a Women in Media thing. It happened around about the same time. Walk into the room and it was 99% white female. And I did stick out. And I wasn't planning to stick out that evening. I was planning to just stay in the background and see what these awards were about and who's who. And I was just like, okay, so even as we grow numbers as women participants and women leaders, we are still missing the woman of color in the conversation. So that arc, unfortunately, has not gotten much wider. And so needless to say, there's lots of work to do. My approach to leadership was more of a mentor leader. And I had hoped that, women that came up with me during my time under me would be motivated to stick with it and to, reach for the highest heights in media. I've always felt like we should reward work that is done and to point people in the general direction. So always had an open door policy where individuals could pick my brain. I have given practically everybody a reference in this city because I strongly believe in not just supporting in words, but supporting in deed. But there is a mammoth task ahead of us. And like when I was asked to sit on the panel, I was like, looking at quotes about women in media, and the representation piece is a big deal. If you can't see it, it is very hard to believe in it. I came with a dream and a pipe dream really to, make a mark in broadcasting and make a mark in media in general. And that dream hasn't overly been realized. It's been realized to an extent, but not overly so. And that's why I'm still working in media, because I'm still trying to find ways that I can make an impact. So how has it grown? It's grown. Grateful for the grads, grateful for the movements. There are some really interesting movements coming out of our colleges, around equality and gender equality in particular. And so I'm very heartened by that, but there's lots of work to be done.
Danae, we'll come back to representation in the media in a bit. That's a very, and then the stats that you presented, not something new, but they still remain shocking to a certain degree. Kerrie, you are an integral member of the first family of Canadian reggae. How much of a change have you witnessed in the music infrastructure and sustainable opportunities for female representation in Canadian reggae?
It's a good question. There's definitely been a change. A great change. I would agree with everything that Danae just said, and not to repeat anything, but there's still a lot of growth that has to be done. When I was growing up, let's say visually, we didn't have many faces of color on TV, and where the faces or voices of color came from was CHRY at the time, our local station. So being that I am from Canada's first family of reggae and had the opportunity to even be on air with CHRY, I felt right from the get-go there was a need to represent Canadian music, Canadian culture. Of course, women's voices, because I was a very strong advocate for females in the reggae scene, seeing that they had a struggle to actually elevate in their career. There has been some growth. Again, back to it not being much, I would say the opportunities that are out there for women to grow in media are limited, and there's so many women now wanting to step into the industry, do more, but I think more needs to be done in a creative aspect for the future to build more opportunities. The more people have to create the laneway. Myself, I did that, and it's been very, very good. The laneway, the experience, Rebel Vibes, 18 years with the station. There was a need for more Canadian reggae. And so I feel many need to now look at what they can build. What opportunity can you build and bring? Because there still is a lot of people wanting to step into the arena, but where are they going to sit? What are they going to do? So the diversity and what we've seen in 2020 is slowly opening that up, because everyone's had the time to think and be able to start to create what it is they're very passionate for. I think for myself personally, I had so many great experiences over the years to grow and then be able to present new ideas, new opportunities. But as the world continues to change, we need to change. We also need to educate ourselves. We have to share knowledge that we receive. And most importantly, we have to be very strong advocates for what we believe in. So I would say being that an advocate for Canadian reggae, I see growth for Canadian female artists. I would love to see more opportunities for them to be able to step out. And as the BIPOC community is now recognizing, we have extremely strong voices, we have very strong missions, and as Danae says, we have dreams, and those dreams really are reality. So VX3 VIBE105 gives us that opportunity to take our thoughts, our ideas, our creativity, and our dreams and make them reality. So yeah, it's been a journey, but it's one that's opening up more opportunities, and we all can present them and we can all be a part of them. That I think is the best part now, seeing over the years of growth.
Very interesting that you say that it's opening up opportunities, and we'll come back to that in a bit. So, but first, Danae, technology. You've lived media for as I said, over a good 12 to 15 years, or even more than that. Correct me if I'm wrong. Technology in itself is a very, very powerful tool. However, do you think the available technology has rather hindered the ability for Afro-Caribbean female media curators to reach their potential mass audience?
So this question is an interesting one because of the word access. So we have more access to media tools and channels than we've ever had. However, it's a two-edged sword, because it means that not only women have access, but men and everybody else has the same amount of access. And we are now seeing a plethora of ideas. Like, it's almost vomit in social media, where everybody's doing a podcast, everybody's doing this, that, the other. I mean, I've thought about doing a podcast and I'm like, I don't know if I want to enter that, because it's so saturated. And so for me, I come back to where it starts for me. It's always started with traditional media. In particular, radio is one of the most flexible pieces, especially radio in the environment of a VX3. I've always said this to volunteers and contributors, that the people who are most flexible will last. And I'm going to add to that, the people who are most adaptable will last. There are so many opportunities now to erase the person from media. The tech is wild, actually. From what happens on your Apple Watch to what happens, you know, in your home with Alexa. Alexa is telling you the weather. Alexa is telling you the traffic. You know what I mean? We are in an interesting time in history where we have to be very adaptable, very quickly adaptable. But the other piece is we have to be unique. We have to be special. What is that oomph? What is that piece that makes you connect to an audience beyond your shorts? Because we can't think local only. We have to think local and global, because there are shared histories, there are shared experiences, and it is actually the zone that new technologies allows us to access. So for me, technology keeps me up at night, literally, because as soon as I turn around, there's a change. You know, like, you know, TikTok, perfect example. 5 years ago, not on anybody's lips. Now, labels are launching songs on TikTok, right? Everybody's doing some kind of challenge. Once upon a time, that was the radio disc jock. Once upon a time, we were the curators of culture in a real sense. So what do? We don't curl up. We access these same tools to our advantages. And so the opportunities are endless for women of color in particular. Now you can be heard. Your voice is not only important, but it can also be valued. However, it takes work. And coming back to that adaptability piece, you have to be willing to put in the work, because I can tell you that the percentage of lazy people that are bussing in new tech is very low. It may seem like a lot of people are making it, but they're not. And so individuals who are contributors in traditional media and in traditional ways, you have the opportunity to be the cream that rises to the top. If you have been producing content in traditional ways, you have skill sets that allow you to present and produce and reproduce content in a way that the person who's just falling into it without the passion, without the interest, trying to just get a quick shine, you have the opportunity to use all these tools, but you have to know them and you have to be willing to engage with them. Because if you're not adaptable, it will steamroll us. So for me, I've seen the arc of technology. Oh my goodness, when I started at CHRY, there was no Facebook, and I'm not that old, right? And now there's Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, everybody. And I mean, as we come off tonight, somebody's launching an app. So how do you keep abreast of the technology, use it to your advantage, know that, you know, all of these tools allow you agency. It's just to access it.
Mm-hmm. Well said, Danae. Kerrie, coming back to you, what does the future of female-led Canadian reggae look like to you?
I see the future being more into the area of production. At least I can only speak for myself and what I've seen during the time of COVID. Women are stepping up in the areas of production. They're also stepping up in the area of management and publicity, marketing, and really taking an ownership of their own music. So when we say female-led Canadian reggae, I include all female artists that are producing reggae music. I see women that are championing their journeys now. Instead of spending so much money on publicists and promotion, they're using the platforms that Danae has mentioned, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and they're producing content to make a commercial about their brand new album, putting that out. They're promoting their own material. And when it comes to, I could say some of the female producers that I've seen really up their game, they are producing a new sound of music, more creative, definitely more diverse, a lot more multicultural, and a sound that speaks more to our Canadian landscape. And that is a multicultural landscape. So infusing different sounds, that also opens up new audiences. And then of course, a cross culture of receiving it. So I see Canadian reggae stepping into an arena that has taken quite some time to get there. We've always been a genre that has received less attention. The majority of the attention of reggae came through CHRY. From my history of being at the station, we've seen the growth, and then of course the commitment that the DJs have at CHRY, then to VIBE105, and around the entire city. They are stepping up, understanding the importance of what we have. We have our own culture in Canadian reggae, and that needs to be really spoken to, celebrated, and elevated all together. So I look forward to it, and I know for myself, I've learned a lot during COVID time, and technology. Once you learn it and implement it, it's one of the easiest things. But try and tell an old dog like me, they got to learn that new trick. It was so hard to do, right, Fatima? But once you do, learn it, it opens up your mind and your creativity to want to do more. Mm-hmm. So you find those pockets that you know that you can express yourself, lend your creativity to, and of course, achieve a new direction. That's what I feel Canadian reggae is looking at, a new direction. And that direction is coming from the unity, the togetherness, the ability to have a collective, as we are here today, all sourcing and supporting. I see it to be very prosperous.
Rightly said, Kerrie, although the impact of women in media cannot be questioned, but there is something that we need to talk about when it comes to representation. So regarding media as a profession, women are underrepresented in media ownership, information production, and in decision-making positions. Globally, when we talk about the stats, women make up only 24% of the persons heard, read about, or seen in newspapers, television, and radio news. Rhea, my next question would be to you. As a creator of cultural specific content for the Canadian Filipino community, can you talk to us more about the absence of strong female influencers and media outlets specific to the community?
Thank you for the question, Fatima. And to answer that, I would like to share who the media serves and the role of women in media. So who does the media serve? This has created some confusion over the years, even before I joined the alternative media community. For 9 years of working in this outfit and speaking to some of my media colleagues based in the Philippines, the media's role is to ensure that those who sit in power are doing their job for the people who they vowed to serve. But the problem is that in the case of the Philippines, state-owned media has become just mouthpieces of those who sit there. So for women in media, this is quite a struggle for us as we face a number of challenges in delivering information to our stakeholders. I take myself as an example. As an activist and a media practitioner, I was once a victim of fake news and trolls back in 2019, and someone who tried to destroy my reputation and principles. They tried using my Facebook profile to create a fake profile page. And I understand what this work entails, especially when I try to deliver information, while I also do my best to be aware of the backlash from those who disagree with information I get from the ground to expose the truth. So therefore, there is a security threat in place while I do my job. And with that being said, there's a good number of women in media to serve the community. However, because when we face this kind of atrocity from the current Philippine state, we face vulnerability and danger, to a point that a number of my female colleagues are subjected to red tagging, illegal arrests, and death threats. So we face difficulty in doing our work properly as we see this as a dark cloud hanging over our heads. And according to Philippine Center for Investigative Journalism, there were 33 women who were targets of attacks from 2016 to 2019. My colleague, Lady Ann Salem of alternative outfit Manila Today, was illegally arrested on December 10th last year, which happened to be the International Human Rights Day. But due to lack of evidence, she was released eventually on Friday, March 5th. So press freedom has been outrightly suppressed since Rodrigo Duterte became the Philippine president, especially now that the controversial Anti-Terrorism Act of 2020 legalizes these kinds of human rights violations against the Filipino people. So yes, the fear is valid, but we can't live in fear forever. As a woman media practitioner, I vowed to deliver information that is truthful and serves the interests of the Filipino people. And that's what I intend to do as long as I'm in this arena. All the more that we, as women in this field, must push back from this kind of attack against us and suppression of press freedom. So for my fellow women who would like to embark on this outlet, I encourage you to do so. I also understand that this may be the darkest day of our lives, but we will see the light at the end of the tunnel. And as in the words of my colleague, Nonoy Espina of the National Union of Journalists of the Philippines, quote, "If you take away press freedom, you're also taking away freedom of expression," end quote. We simply can't let this happen. It is our right to practice press freedom and freedom of expression, and therefore, we must do everything in our power to protect them in the service of the people.
Thank you, Rhea. That was very inspiring. Empowered women empower women. That's something I read this morning, and it's seen like it's a hashtag on social media, and I do agree. Continuing our conversation on women empowerment, Mel, this is for you. Women empowerment and hip hop are two concepts that many have been trying to marry for as long as as long as hip hop has stood. It's a sea flooded with prominent male hip hop figures. What will it take to manifest and ensure sustained longevity for female representation?
I think that hip hop music and hip hop culture is a reflection of what we see every day in society, where, men are typically the gatekeepers, the power holders, the storytellers. And we saw a glimpse of what it was like for female voices in hip hop to have a duality that wasn't just over sexualized. There was, really self-empowered women, self-empowered voices, and voices that had that kind of sexual, sexy party vibe. You had like a Lil' Kim and a Queen Latifah at the same time. And then it just kind of went down a path where it was just one type of female persona that you were seeing in music. Lately, over the past, I'll say 5 years or so, we've kind of seen a resurgence of very strong personalities in hip hop. But that equality isn't there. We're seeing like lots of Cardi B, lots of Megan Thee Stallion, and I'm really excited to see these strong female voices that are kind of taking control of their bodies, their stories, their narratives. But we're not seeing enough of that other side that, artists like Rhapsody and other artists like her that exist, but they're just not getting that marketing shine. And I think in order to see that equality and accept that duality, I think both sides of the female persona have to work together in order to claim their place at the table and have their voices heard, as opposed to just one overpowering the other because it's more marketable.
Now talking about women in leadership, what do you feel is the biggest roadblock to seeing more women in leadership positions, especially in the media?
It's funny because I think I'm going to end up building on what a lot of the women have already said. Danae mentioned a lot of this. talking about your early career. Mel just mentioned it about men being gatekeepers of hip hop. For me, I think the biggest roadblock for women in leadership would be the gender discrimination, along with that diversity discrimination, because we're not seeing that. So, you know, with it being International Women's Day today, obviously I'm keeping my eye on stats and what's going on. And I was looking at the Canada's Women Foundation, for example. So they were talking about women comprising only 19.5% of the board of members of Canada's top 500 companies, not even 20%. And then just 8.5% of that, of the highest paid positions in Canada's top 100 listed companies, are held by women. And women only hold maybe 25% of that of vice presidents and 15% of CEO. And, you know, speaking to what Danae said too in her early career, like when you look at it, I mean, a lot of us work in media and hold other positions, hold jobs outside. I work in a very corporate environment where there is no diversity. Everybody in upper management is either male, and if there are females, they're white. There's nobody of the BIPOC community. And there's a real lack of that. And I think that gender discrimination and that diversity not being there is huge, huge impact. I mean, we also have to look at sort of how we grew up and how we can break those chains as well, because there was a KPMG study that I found, and they were talking about, you know, they did a survey of women, and 86% of women remember being taught to be nice to others growing up. 44% remember being taught to be a good leader, and only 34% were taught to share their point of view. And there's those, you know, societal norms where they say, as a woman, you've got to be a good homemaker and do this and do that. And then I see like my friends who are in corporate world who are at home being mothers, but they're getting reprimanded, or I guess not being elevated in their positions when they get back to work because they went home to be a mom. You know what I mean? And so that gender discrimination, now this is no diss to the men that I know that are helping us in media, or, you know, lend their hand to say, I support this woman, which is great. But to this day, it's not enough. Like looking at the news today with it being International Women's Day, we're still talking about the fight for gender equality to this day, many moons later. And it's like the fact that we're still talking about that in sports, you know, in everyday life, it's crazy. I mean, you know, I saw that the Raptors, for example, are doing this thing in the sports world for the next month where they're highlighting all the women that are announcers that will do the sports stats, and they'll be the broadcasters for the next month. That's great, but that still doesn't address what's going on, not in front of the camera, but behind it on a corporate level with the gender discrimination. And then even myself being in radio and media and looking at all these women that I've had to look at, I'm still, as a BIPOC woman, but also an Indo-Caribbean woman, I'm still seeing a lack of diversity of my own people, somebody who looks like me. And that's also a problem because there's a very even smaller can of women that look like me that I can say, oh my God, there is somebody like me. And I hope that, you know, because I know with gender diversity, that's going to lead to better business performance. Right now, we're still struggling with that. And for me, gender discrimination and diversity are huge roadblocks for women in leadership.
Completely second that, Nadz. Mel, over to you very briefly. We just need to keep within the time constraints. Do you feel gender inequality should be urgently addressed at an individual level, where people see the need to change their own behaviors and attitudes, as Nadz pointed out, or from a systemic level, where changes need to be made to mandates and policies first?
I think you can take it either way, to be honest. Like how the same way we're trying to combat racism in the corporate world, and just to Nad's point, like, you know, I'm the only Black person at an advertising agency in 2021. And we're seeing those same types of battles being fought all over the place. And then when it comes to, you know, the world of hip hop, I'm often the only female in the room. And when it comes to DJs, I'm definitely the only female in the room. But as far as like how we're gonna change it, I think like teamwork makes the dream work, and it has to be a collective mindset, and people have to be on the same page as far as what changes need to be made and how to make it. And to answer your question, that's probably more of a systemic change than just individual change, but it has to start with that individual mindset.
Lee, the next question is for you. How can we as media curators and influencers challenge the scarcity of these dominant counter stereotypes that Nadia referred to earlier?
In my opinion, I just feel like we just have to keep putting up the good fight, like keep showing up, Not going away, not, feeling discouraged when we're told that, we can't do it. Because like for me, when it comes to like event hosting, not so much in radio, a lot of the times I get passed over because of my appearance. I'm not sexy enough, or I'm not showing enough skin, things like that. So the main thing for me is I just keep, go finding different avenues and showing what I've got. And I think that should work for everybody else. If you just you're in their face, they can't deny it at some point, right? Because your talent is showing through. So that for me, that's the simple answer. And I hope everybody feels the same way about that as well.
Absolutely. Nina, you've been quiet for a while, so the next question is for you. As a media influencer, do you feel the portrayal of women on social media has affected gender equality in some way or the other?
I definitely think so. I think with social media, people want to showcase their highlight reel and what they're proud of, whether that's work goals, body goals, makeup goals, hair goals, whatever it is. And I think there comes a point in time where you become objectified, and it's definitely happened to myself before as well. And it's just it's one of those things where you want to have that presence posting what you're comfortable with, but then there are other people, specifically not all males again, but the male gender, who will specifically play to that and take advantage of it. And when you're in an industry in media which is mostly dominated by men, there's times where it is uncomfortable to speak up, and it is hard unless you have allies such as right here that I have with me, all these wonderful women here at Vibe. Sometimes it does get difficult to speak up, and there's experiences, even when I was a student trying to get into media from a long time ago, that I had with other people who were like, oh, let's start a show together. And then it turns out they don't really want to start a show with you. They want to take it somewhere else. And it's one of those things where it sucks, because social media is a really big platform that you can really use to promote yourself. But then you as a woman, I feel like a lot of us have to second guess or think about what we post. Honestly, an innocent bikini picture because you're proud of the abs you grew over the last 6 months turns into something completely different. And it gets frustrating. But yeah, I think there's definitely a little bit of an issue there at the very least.
Right. Just to continue off that, Nina, how would you then define gender equality in our social media age?
I don't gender equality in the social media age. I don't even feel really exists. I feel even if you look at it from another perspective, if you look at a man's followers versus a woman's followers, there's a big difference. Men typically have a lot less followers, unless they are in media. They're a DJ, they're an MC, they're a rapper. But if you're just a regular guy, you don't have that many followers, whereas a regular girl can have up to 10,000 followers, and she can be that influence to the people. So I don't really think there is gender equality when it comes to social media, to be quite honest with you.
Right. Absolutely. So I'm just continuing on this, in this line of conversation. Lee, can you point out to a specific time where you felt pressured to give into or challenge a particular narrative or a typecast designed for women in your role?
Oh, Lee, this is going to be good. Because having MC in the industry, I know I'm waiting for it.
Again, it all comes back to appearance, right? So I know promoters personally in the city that I've had conversations with that will say, I can't sell you, right? And it's because they're catering to the men, right? They don't really care about what women want to pay for. They're catering to the men, and the men want a certain thing, I guess, out of females. So for me, I'm not a big fan of, painting at my face, putting makeup. No diss to anybody else who likes to do that, but it's not my thing. I don't, I'm not, don't like to show my bust and stuff like that. And it was, you got to give me this look or you don't get the job. And I had to pass up on it because I have to stay true to myself. right? And at the end of the day, like, I am talented. I can rock the heck out of a crowd if you ever come to see me perform. And I'm hella fun. And I think if once we get to a place where we're just judging everybody just on the strength of their talent, we'll be in a better place. But for me, it always boils down to that. Oh, you're so awesome at what you do. And I've got a lot of guys in my corner, you know, pushing that narrative. But when it comes to getting that work, it always boils down to, yeah, so do you think you can show me some leg, or maybe put on, I think I'll see you in a skirt or something, you know? And I it's just not me. So we'll see how that goes.
Amazing. So we've been able to drive some really amazing conversations today. Thought-provoking nonetheless. Unfortunately, time constraints, and we need to open up the Q&A to the audience. So we're now going to open the floor for questions from the audience. Questions in the chat, please. I do have a question for Rhea. Rhea, now, who inspired you to be in the media?
Who inspired me? I think, no, it's not I think. I know who inspires me are the people around me, are the people who are marginalized and, of course, underrepresented, and those people who have, struggled so much over these years, because I consider myself, before I became an activist, I struggled too, and I think that's where it also came from, based on my personal experience, that resorted me to become who I am now. And of course, the most inspiration that I get of what I do is from the people around me and from the people who have been, oppressed, and those people who have been abused for so many years, and for such a long time. So I think that's why I am here, because I want to provide them the platform that it's not being provided to them. I want the voiceless to have that kind of platform, because not every time they get such a platform. And this is why, for me and for us, this is very critical to have a kind of platform, because it only tells us that we have to utilize this, and we need to let the people know, the world, as a matter of fact, of what's going on with my people. And it's not just my people, because all our struggles are interconnected. I mean, the struggles are interconnected, the issues are interconnected, and that's why solidarity is being important to us, and that's why media for us is such a critical and important platform for us to use to provide the voice, for these people who have been so voiceless over these years. So I'm very honored to be joined in this platform, and I'm being honored to continue doing this kind of work for the community, for the people.
Thank you, Rhea. Danae, the final question is for you. We are living through the pandemic, and there have been a lot of stats around women in the media, left, right, and center. But I haven't seen anything in particular about women, Afro-Caribbean women in the media industry in Canada. What are the stats around them? Any sort of information? How have they been affected by the pandemic?
So I too was looking for stats for this conversation, and it's very hard to find granular information about contribution, leadership as it relates to BIPOC. What I know we account for, sadly, is too much of the consumption of media. That I've always flagged that for contributors is be a creator, not just a buyer, not just a consumer. But yeah, it's very hard to find stats as it relates to that granular level. I've been looking, and I don't see any substantive information that I would bring forward here. But needless to say, there are multiple organizations that continue to advocate for the presence of women of color and gender equality in general in media. And I encourage everybody to look them up, support them where you can. There are newly formed organizations that are seeking to gather Black women in media, Black female journalists, all of those things. Look them up and see if you can glean anything. By the numbers, you can also strengthen. So, be a part of it. I think one of the challenges that we face is working in isolation too much. The reality is, as Rhea can point out, there's strength in the community of it. So imagine if all the women who we knew in media were, gathering in a circle such as this from time to time and having a conversation about what we want from media, where do we want to position each other, how do we mentor each other to move on to the next level, then those stats can actually be recorded and reported. They are, I am assuming we can't find the stats because they're so low. I'm assuming that we can't speak to it because it's never been studied on a grand scale. We know, we're all practitioners, so we know from our experiences when we walk into the rooms, we know from our experiences when we're being treated as less than or meat. We know the experience, so we have a lot of anecdotal statistics to bring to the table. But I do say, if we would take the opportunity to gather more and learn from each other more, and join these units so that they can have the strength in numbers, then we can start advancing these agendas, where we say we want to see more women, not just in presentation roles, more women in leadership, where we want to see more curation being led by women. I do cultural curation, and I'm not going to toot my own horn, but I do a pretty good job. And so imagine if, we were able to tout that much more of our female participants in media.
I have one question, and anybody who's ready to reply rather quickly to this, and it's a question from the audience. Considering the challenges in vetting the good intentions of men in the industry, how do you identify strong mentorship support? Rather quickly, fastest finger first, I guess. Who would want to reply to that?
The question, say one more time.
Considering the challenges in vetting the good intentions of men in the industry, how do you identify strong mentorship or support?
I was gonna say just quickly, I feel like a way to identify that for myself personally has always been when it comes to having those difficult discussions with men in the industry, whether it's in a group setting specifically, and just making note of really who's saying what, like who's trying to just cover their own behind, or who's actually like listening to what you're saying and acknowledging it and asking questions about how they can make things better for you as a woman in the industry. That's always been a big thing for me, and how I'm able to, figure out who I really look up to and am able to confide in and just trust as like someone who sees my talent and not like anything else, basically.
Right.
Yeah, it's those people who want to honestly build with you. Because you can have those honest, because during this whole COVID, during, the movements and the killings that were happening to Black individuals in the States, like I've had a lot of people I've had to like check, and I realized those are people I'm not going to build with, and they were men in the industry. So you're absolutely right. It's those people you can have honest conversations with. It's those guys you can reach out to that are honestly going to talk to you and say, yo, Nad, how about we try this? Maybe try this, that you're going to be able to build with. Because I can do the same thing with this group of women, but I got to be able to do it with the guys that I'm trying to work with so that we can kill that gender inequality.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you so much for this. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. It looks like we've covered all of the questions. Thank you once again, dear panelists and members of the audience. We appreciate you being part of this discussion today. For those interested, a recorded version of the session will be available on our social media platforms, so follow us at VIBE105TO. And for more information, music, news, and reviews, please visit our website. That's VIBE105TO.com. Thanks again for joining us this evening, and we will see you next time. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Big up
Bye.
Vibe.